Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Tyler, and today I'm going to be recapping a huge series win for the Baltimore Orioles this week at Camden Yards. They took 3 out of 4 against the vaunted New York Yankees to gain sole possession of the American League East and really send a message to the entire league that this division, it runs through Baltimore. Potentially the entire AL runs through Baltimore. So we're excited to dig into it and break things down. A quick rundown of what we're going to go through in addition to the quick recaps is, of course, some injury news here. The Orioles have activated John Means. We'll talk about what that means. Unfortunately, they've had to send Grayson Rodriguez to the IL. Cionel Perez has been activated, but surprisingly, the Orioles have demoted Dylan Tate. We'll talk about maybe why that happened and why it makes sense. I think I hinted at that as a possibility in a recent podcast. Of course, Kyle Bradish is back, and he made an impact in this series. We'll dig into that as well. And then the DFAing of Johan Ramirez. Again, I think that's not too much of a head scratcher there. It makes a lot of sense. Ramirez was kind of the last man on the roster, so it makes a lot of sense there. Of course, the quick recaps. We'll hand out a couple awards, and then we'll preview the series in Cincinnati coming up this weekend. But before we get to that, I've got some exciting news to share with the audience. We do have a sponsor for this week's episode, and that sponsor is Bet Online. BetOnline.ag. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. On YouTube here, I'm sharing what the BetOnline.ag website looks like. Very easy to come in and get all the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams and make some well-informed betting decisions. You can get your latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head on over to betonline.ag today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Really want to thank betonline.ag for supporting the Warehouse Podcast. Check them out, betonline.ag. And I believe I have their social tag here as well. It is going to be at betonline_AG. We'll link to all that in the description of the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcast. So check them out. Thanks again to Bet Online. All right, let's get into the Orioles news. So first, sort of the most surprising news of the week was that Grayson Rodriguez has been placed on the injured list. This was sort of the reciprocal move to John Means coming off of the IL. Means had to come off of the IL before Kyle Bradish did, even though Bradish seemed to be ready a little bit before and actually made his season debut before Means did, simply because Means's 30-day rehab stint was at its end. And even though he wasn't going to pitch again, the Orioles had to get him off the IL. And we talked about, last podcast, what the Orioles could possibly do to make room for both Means and for Bradish. I mentioned Johan Ramirez as a likely candidate to get DFA'd. That did happen, but not until later in the week. And I think we talked about, Mike Baumann maybe being on the chopping block if there wasn't going to be an IL stint. We thought maybe Craig Kimbrell would go on the IL and that would make it easy for him. That hasn't happened. Kimbrell did not pitch this week against the Yankees after having a tough week the previous weekend, blowing 2 saves to the Oakland Athletics, but has avoided the IL for now. But we did say there might be another IL stint coming. These are these things that sometimes we don't hear about right away. It's not a player necessarily exiting a game early and it's evident that they're hurt. This is sort of similar to the Tyler Wells situation where he hadn't pitched for a couple days and then we heard he's got some discomfort and now the Orioles have him on the shelf for a while. And with Wells, it's actually going to be a little bit of time, it sounds like, because he's not even, throwing yet. He's still resting up. With Rodriguez, it's possible that this is not as much of a big deal. They said he woke up from the day after his start in this Yankee series because he does pitch in this Yankee series. We'll get into that momentarily. But he woke up the day after his start and just didn't feel as good as you normally would. Obviously, it's a lot of work on your body to throw a Major League Baseball game, and it takes some time for you to recuperate. But Rodriguez felt a little bit worse than he normally does the morning after a start, which led to some imaging done for the Orioles on his right shoulder. They found some inflammation, and apparently they're just going to give him some time to really let that rest. They said, the 2 weeks, it sounds like they're going to at least give him that at a minimum. Jim Palmer spoke on the broadcast about this, just kind of saying that, he's built up enough that he could miss these 2 weeks and probably come right back and not really be any worse for the wear. He wouldn't necessarily need a rehab start or anything like that. He could probably just rest up, take a bullpen, and probably bounce back and be ready to go. But of course, we'll see what happens when the inflammation calms down a little bit. But still, really, really shocking. And hopefully, it's not terrible news. It's not. This is also we should say I want to dig into Rodriguez here for a second. You know, this is a guy who's in his first full season in the major leagues. Obviously, his rookie season was last year, but he had the thing where he got sent down and, struggled early on, really succeeded later on. Ended up throwing 122 innings in the big leagues last year, threw 41 in the third innings um, in the minors. So that's a combined, you know, output of 163 innings and a third. He's already thrown 34 this month or a month in. So if you do 34 times what? It's April, May, June, July, August, September, baseball season 6 months. He was on pace for, 200 innings. And was he going to get to 200 innings? I'm not sure. And any team really wants their pitchers to go to 200 innings anymore, especially a guy like Rodriguez who you have under control for several more seasons. You want to take care of this guy. So was he ever going to throw 200? I'm not so sure. So I think the Orioles are smartly saying, look, we're very good right now. Rodriguez has pitched very well. He's a little bit uncomfortable. There is no reason for us to power through this, especially in light of Means coming off the IL, Radish coming off the IL, Cole Irvin pitching better right now than he has ever before in an Orioles uniform. Burns is around. Burns is the guy you're going to ride into the ground because, you don't have him next year. Obviously, you want him here for October. But other than that, you're not going to try to protect Corbin Burns too much. Rodriguez is a guy you are going to protect. So I think it makes a lot of sense. It's obviously disappointing from a fan perspective because, wow, just as soon as we're getting Means and Bradish healthy and we potentially have that five of, Bradish, Burns, Kramer, Means, and Rodriguez, we have that snatched away from us because Rodriguez is going to go on the IL. But I think from the Orioles' perspective, this is the smart move. This is the make sure we get through and survive the 162 game season. We know how talented we are, so there's no reason to really overextend ourselves there. So I think this is smart from the Orioles' perspective. Just a bummer, and hopefully Rodriguez is back here in 2 weeks. And as Palmer kind of indicated on the broadcast, he only needs those 2 weeks and maybe a bullpen session, to really bounce back and not necessarily need a rehab stint. That would be ideal there, but still, disappointing news. The opposite is that John Means is back. He doesn't pitch in this series. He'll pitch in the first game. I'm sorry, not in the first game, in the second game of the Cincinnati series this weekend, which we'll preview at the end here. Excited to see that. He really dominated in his last rehab start. I think he threw 7 innings, allowed 1 hit, struck out 8. So there's that part of it that I'm really excited about. But yeah, unfortunate that Rodriguez had to go on the IL as sort of a reciprocal move. But hopefully we're just 2 weeks away from seeing our full strength rotation. And you know what? We've waited a month. I think we can wait 2 more weeks. It's not like the team has exactly suffered during it. So I'm not too worried about that. Other big news, injury news of the week. CNL Perez comes back. I had talked about this in the last podcast as well, saying, hey, he had just thrown, I think he'd had 2 rehab appearances. As a reliever, you don't necessarily have to get stretched out as much as you just have to pitch, make sure your stuff is looking okay, and you bounce back that next day or two feeling okay. Evidently, Perez has done that because he is right back after just those 2 rehab stints, I think separated by, maybe 3 days apiece, 3 or 4 days apiece. He's back. So kind of surprising there. And then, once that happens, that makes that roster crunch a little tougher because, as I said before, you had an IL stint seemed possible for somebody on the staff with Bradish and Means coming back. We knew Kimbrel had the back stuff. He ended up not going on the IL, which is fine. Rodriguez does. So you kind of get the same effect there in terms of, roster flexibility. You get one guy on the IL as you bring one off. Okay. And then Johan Ramirez was the obvious guy to get DFA'd at some point. They do that for Bradish later in the week. And then when Perez comes back, it becomes okay. Now we are 3 guys coming back at the same time. You're kind of out of flexible moves at that point. You kind of have to do something with losing talent in a way. And my I guess I was guessing there that Mike Baumann might be at the end of his rope if they had to DFA someone. You're not going to DFA Jacob Webb. You're not going to demote Keegan Aiken. He's pitched too well and been too important. The only other guy on there that had an option remaining that seemed plausible was Dylan Tate, and Tate does go down. I think this is, slightly surprising if you are, you know, a more casual Orioles fan who has seen Dylan Tate be a pretty important part of this bullpen pretty much since the year after he was traded here from the Yankees in the Zach Britton trade. He's been a pretty important part of this. He's been, a high leverage guy in the seventh, eighth inning, you know, a guy that you can depend on prior to missing all of 2023 with his injury stuff. And his numbers this year, if we look at like his high level numbers, aren't too bad. He's got a 2.84 ERA over 12 and 2/3 innings, and his whip is just 1.03, like very competitive, kind of right where you want him to be. But if you dig a little deeper, you start to see that it's a little bit tenuous there. He's only struck out 6 guys in 12 and 2/3. Now, Tate's not a guy that has ever really struck out a ton of guys, and he's a guy that it's a reason why I've never loved him in the bullpen. Not that you've got to strike out, 12 per nine or anything and be overpowering to be a dominant relief pitcher, but when you encourage contact so much, and Tate does encourage contact, there's just more room for error there. And that's always been a thing for him, but this year it's even more so. He's encouraging a lot of contact. Now, he is getting ground balls. I'm on YouTube here. I'm showing his Baseball Savant page. His ground ball rate is over 60%, which is fantastic. It's elite. It's a very high number. And traditionally ground balls are going to be going for uh lower batting averages than line drives and fly balls. Fly balls can go out of the ballpark. Ground balls, typically are limited to only a single. So it's a good metric for success typically. And Tate's a guy that thrives on ground balls, inducing double plays, which is good. But you combine that with some other stuff, which is he's just not getting whiffs at all. He's only getting whiffs on 11.5% of his pitches. That's pretty bad. You usually want that around 25 to 30% to be, you know, palatable. 11.5% is really bad. And consequently, he's not striking out a lot of guys. He's not getting a lot of chases. His exit velocities aren't good. He's giving up hard contact. And then on top of that, he's also walking guys too much. I think his walk rates and his strikeout rates are about the same. Yeah, 12.2% strikeout rate, which is bad, and a 12.2% walk rate, which is not as bad, but it's pretty bad. So you're walking and striking guys out at the same rate. And I said before his 2.84 ERA is good, but his expected ERA is 4.78, which, that might be fine for a number 5 starter who is going to give you 5 innings, go through an order 2 to 3 times. It's not good for a bullpen guy. And it's certainly not the guy you want facing, the heart of a lineup or anything. That's a guy you probably are putting, in some junk innings, some throwaway innings. And that's not the guy that I think the Orioles want Dylan Tate to be. It's not the guy that Dylan Tate is capable of being. So if they think he can go down to the minors and work on some stuff, then by all means, go and do it. We've definitely seen some reduced velocity from him this year. That sinker, which is his bread and butter pitch, was averaging 94 miles per hour in 2022. This year, it's not even getting to 92 miles per hour. So there's definitely something going on there. And he's using it even more than before. So that would tell me that he's got even less confidence in his other pitches. So there's just a lot going on there with Dylan Tate that makes you feel a little bit squeamish when he's in the game right now. I'm hoping he can go down and maybe figure some stuff out in, low pressure situations. Like I said, his performance has not been outwardly terrible this year, but I think the Orioles are maybe nipping it in the bud right here to say, all right, it hasn't gone haywire just yet. Let's do something here before it really does. So you go down to Norfolk, work on some stuff, and that's what the options are for. Yes, he's an older guy to be getting optioned. He's 30 years old. He hasn't been optioned since I think 2019. But it's sort of similar to how Tyler Wells was sort of optioned out of, not necessarily out of nowhere last year. He had been struggling on the mound as a starter, and the Orioles, said we got to do something about it. So sort of similar there. Not shocked by it. Was it necessary? I don't know. But if you think Dylan Tate's got anything left in the tank, you use the option, you go down into the pitching lab, work on some things, and see if you can get this guy just looking a little bit better. Maybe he comes back up with another tick on his fastball. That would do a lot to help. But yeah, somewhat shocking. But if you look at the Orioles roster complexion, they had to do something and we know Mike Elias does not like losing talent. So if the options were, all right, we got a DFA Ballman who's, struggled in general this year, or we've got an option for Tate and his peripherals don't look great. Let's maybe send him down, let him work on some stuff for a week or two. I think that probably is a good decision because realistically, they haven't been using Tate in high leverage stuff. It's been, Kimbrel in the ninth, Cano or Coulomb in the eighth. Webb has kind of stepped in to be like the seventh inning guy. They don't really do it that way. But in general, Webb's getting more high leverage stuff. Aiken's getting more high leverage. So Tate was like the fifth or sixth guy in the bullpen. And that's just a guy that, you know, you're not going to prioritize him over a Perez who has been recently quite good for the Orioles. So I do agree with the decision, and we'll see if he can bounce back a little bit. He's been so good, and the Orioles need sort of another impact arm in there. So if Tate could be that guy, that would be fantastic to see. All right. I think that wraps up the news stuff. Oh, Kyle Bradish is back. Johan Ramirez is DFA'd. Not a lot to say on that. We can check out Johan Ramirez's Baseball Savant while I'm kind of vamping here. But he's a guy that was 29 years old, had been, I think, DFA'd by the Mets already this season. He's a guy that I think you could potentially think the Orioles will retain. He's 28, excuse me. The Orioles could potentially retain this guy if he gets through waivers again and says to himself, "Hey, these Orioles know how to handle pitchers, how to get the most out of them, especially bullpen guys right now. I'll stick around here, um, and see if I can work on some things, figure some things out, and really, improve my value." There's a possibility there. He's a guy that got through waivers all the way to the Orioles the first time. It potentially goes unclaimed, so I think it makes a lot of sense. And as we just said, it's some tough decisions to make in the bullpen right now. DFAing Johan Ramirez was not one of them. He's a guy that just hasn't pitched particularly well, but there's some flashes there. He's got an arm on him. He's got some good velocity, but you got to prioritize winning. And Johan Ramirez just wasn't a guy that was going to help you win more than, the 7 or 8 other guys in the bullpen right now. So makes a lot of sense. Johan, maybe we'll see you again. The Orioles could use some depth in the bullpen in AAA, so hopefully he sticks around. But if not, might be the last we see of Johan Ramirez in an Orioles uniform. And he's a guy that will probably screw up your Sporkle score at the end of the season. When you're trying to remember all, 38 guys that played for the 2024 Orioles, is Johan Ramirez going to stick in your brain? Probably not in mine, but I'm going to try to retain this little clip of me talking in my brain and say, just remember Johan Ramirez. Like, yeah, we know Gunnar, we know Adley, we even remember Jacob Webb if he has a midseason meltdown, but Johan Ramirez, he's a guy we got to remember to ace our Sporkle quiz here in November when we're in the middle of the dead season of no baseball. That's what we do, take Sporkle quizzes. So try to remember Johan Ramirez for then. All right, let's move on to some series and game recaps. Game 1, Orioles beat the Yankees 2-0. Gunnar Henderson hits a leadoff homer in the first inning, and then really a whole lot of nothing for most of the game here. Clark Schmidt really buckled down and did a nice job for the Yankees. Grayson didn't look like phenomenal in this game. I didn't think he got hit a little bit, didn't get a lot of strikeouts. It wasn't like a normal sort of dominating Grayson start, but got the job done. Only 21% whiffs in this game. Like I said, not phenomenal stuff, but good enough against these Yankees who we know run hot and cold. I think this was the 5th time they've been shut out this year. It was coming off of they finished up the series in Milwaukee, scoring 15 runs in each game, which I think a lot of Yankees fans were thinking, oh, something's clicked. Here we go. The AL East is ours, but Grayson quickly humbled them with the 5 2/3 shutout. But that's kind of, and I think this maybe shows something was brewing in Grayson before he woke up with the soreness. Was he wasn't blowing it past guys, even though he had the good velocity. He averaged 96.2 in this game. His year average is 96.3, so right there. So there wasn't any reduced velocity, but just wasn't getting the whiffs on it. So maybe he was just not quite feeling it, didn't have the control or something, but wasn't overly dominant, but the stats are good. And I think that's another indication of the ace type of stuff this guy has, is that even when he's not 100% right, he's pretty darn effective and puts the Orioles in a really good position to win the game. So like to see that. Cionel Perez comes back, makes his first appearance since like the opening weekend. and looked good. Through 13 pitches, didn't get any whiffs, but the velocity was fine. So you like to see that. He's a guy that, again, doesn't get as many whiffs as you think he should with the velocity he has, especially from the left side, but it tends to work. So good to see that from CNL. Yenier Cano had a good outing, had good velocity. Danny Coulomb was solid. So yeah, all in all, a pretty good showing from the Orioles pitching staff. Obviously, allowing no runs over a full 9 inning game, very impressive. They did allow 7 hits, so again, they got hit around a little bit. It was sort of a weird game where the Yankees offense looked a little bit more potent than the Orioles offense, but the Orioles got the job done when the Yankees didn't. Gunnar leaves the park. I'm forgetting what the other scoring was. Let me see here. Oh, it was that error by Anthony Volpe. That's right. And then Gunnar scores Adley to second. Okay. Yeah, so Volpe had the error. Another thing with the Yankees this week, very bad defense. I felt like all around for the New York Yankees. People talk about it being unlucky. I don't agree with that. The Yankees didn't play well. It's luck is what you make it, and the Yankees did not play particularly well in this game. And that was another example of it. But again, it didn't really matter. The Orioles pitchers were just very good. The Yankees couldn't take advantage of any hits they got. So all in all, good showing from the Orioles. Good showing from Grayson. Bummer that he woke up the next day feeling some soreness there, but hopefully, again, it's just a 2 week rest period and he bounces back. And the Orioles, don't miss him too much because they got Means and Bradish back and they pitch, as well as you expect them to. In game 2 of the series, the Orioles end up winning that one 4-2. Dean Kramer pitches, does a nice job, just gives up the 2 home runs, one of which was to Juan Soto, and then Soto stared him down throughout his trot around the bases. I don't know what that was. I still have yet to get, confirmation or clarity on what exactly Soto was seeing that indicated that Kramer was upset with him, because Soto said after the game that he stared him down. He was asked about it. Why did you stare Kramer down? He's like, oh, he didn't like the shuffle. So I bet he liked that home run though, or something like that. And I didn't see it. I mean, Soto has done the shuffle his entire career. I'm sure pitchers don't like it, but I didn't see anything to indicate that Kramer disliked it any more than anyone else. I will say, from the Oriole fan perspective, the person that watches Kramer pitch, just about every time he's out there, Kramer does kind of get in the zone and start mean mugging throughout his starts. Like he's a guy that if you watch him on days he's not pitching, I feel like he's laughing and goofing around and smiling a lot in the dugout. And then on the days he is pitching, he is locked in, focused on a singular cause, and that is getting opposing hitters out. And maybe he did that at a time that Soto interpreted it as him being crappy about his typical shuffle. I'm not sure. I will say Kramer didn't seem like overly upset about the staring down. The Orioles didn't retaliate in any sort of way. It is what it is, which I love that the Orioles are like, whatever, dude, you're losing anyway. So sure, stare us down. You take this solo homer. We'll take the win. We'll take the series. We'll take the division lead. That's perfectly fine. Go for it. This was a game the Orioles hit a little bit better. They had a decent amount of hard hits off Nestor Cortez. It was really just the 1 inning they got to him, though, and that was helped by some, again, bad defense on the Yankees' part. There was the play where Gleyber Torres got the ball up the middle. I think threw it to third base, hit the runner in the back of the head. The ball got away. Runner scored. There was the fly ball into shallow right field in between Soto and Rizzo. A lot of that kind of stuff where I wouldn't say the Orioles were hitting Cortez crazy hard, but they were doing just enough. They were finding holes. I know Adley had the flare into center field. Wasn't a game where the Orioles were smacking the ball all around the park, but again, just did the little things right. Kramer was good. Keegan Aiken was good. Jacob Webb again was good. 3 strikeouts. Um, just like another good performance from the Orioles pitchers. Kramer didn't get a ton of whiffs, only 18%. Keegan Aiken only threw 10 pitches, but they were 10 good pitches. Got out of got 2 outs there. Jacob Webb, man, 78% whiffs, seven whiffs on 9 swings. I don't know what's going on there with Jacob Webb. They might have captured some magic in a bottle there. Not a guy I was expecting coming into the season to be particularly effective. He's been great so far. He's a guy that the Orioles seem to be counting on. Um, is that a wise decision or not? I don't know. But I will say, look, when Webb came over from the Angels last year, he was pretty good initially out of the gate. Struggled a little bit at the end of the season, and then obviously was not good in the playoffs against the Texas Rangers. But I look, none of the Orioles pitchers were really good in the that series. I think Kyle Gibson had a good appearance, and I think Tyler Wells looked fine. But besides that, it was pretty grim. Bradish, I thought, had a nice start against him, but you get the point. There is really none of the Orioles were doing well because the Rangers, I think, were just on a mission at the time. But Webb so far this year looking really good. He had a little bit extra juice on his fastball in this game. All three swings on his fastball were whiffs. Just looking a little bit different now. There's also some of, you know, did he catch the Yankees at the right time? Maybe. Aaron Judge looks bad at the plate right now, missing pitches in the middle of the plate that he should be hitting. Giancarlo Stanton is a shell of his former self. Rizzo's not hitting. So it could be they're catching them at the right time. Really, it's just like Juan Soto is hitting, and then we know Oswaldo Cabrera hits the homer in game 3, but it goes both ways. You are a product of your environment, and the Yankees not hitting in the series uh could easily be a result of the Orioles pitching very well. So that's what I choose to believe. Um on the Orioles offensive side, not a whole lot to say. Didn't hit any home runs. Like I said, kind of dink and dunk Cortez the whole time. But that's encouraging in itself. Cortez is a guy, former Oriole, made his debut with the Orioles after being a Rule 5 pick. I think he's always seemed to have a little added juice when playing the Orioles. He always pitches well against the Orioles. And this was the first time I can remember him not having a stellar outing against them. So they kind of got over that demon a little bit. And that's about all there is to say for game 2. On to game 3, which was Corbin Burnes against Luis Heel. And I think you would have expected coming into this game that Burnes would dominate this matchup against Heel, who is got an electric arm but is erratic. And that just wasn't really what happened. Now, Burnes pitched well. The only runs he allowed were on that Cabrera home run that just got over the flag court fence in right field. Besides that, pitched pretty well again, avoided the first inning issues. So that was nice to see. And really, that's all there was to say about Burnes. He pitched well, 4 hits over 6 innings, 2 runs, both on that home run, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. Looked good. Let's look at his little breakdown here of his pitches. Yeah, threw the cutter a lot. That was the one thing here is he kind of changed his mix a little bit. He leaned on his cutter even more than he typically does. So he might have seen something there. And the curveball he threw a lot less. The curveball has been his least effective pitch this season. It still has been good in spurts, but he didn't use that quite as much in this game. Leaned on the cutter a lot more, and it was good. Five whiffs on 23 swings is fine. It's not fantastic. It's not terrible. So Burnes was good. He was good. He didn't a little bit unlucky to have that home run, and just got out pitched by Heel, who the big thing for Heel has been avoiding walks, and that's what he successfully did. He walked 1, and I think that 1 didn't come until the 7th inning or the 6th inning, really late in the game. So tough to discredit him. He looked really good. Only gave up 4 hard hit balls the entire game. So yeah, Heel just pitched really well and kind of shut the Orioles down. And then the bullpen was good for the Yankees. They turned to Clay Holmes early. He had to get a 5-out save, which smelled a little bit like desperation from the Yankees. Them saying, we got to get this win because who knows if we're going to get any others. Which is, I don't disagree with that from their perspective. This is a huge series on the road. If you win game 3, you've got a chance to win game 4 and split. And that feels pretty good on a road series against a team in the Orioles who, the perspective on them has shifted. This is a team that should compete for the AL East title, and the Yankees treated him that way. And they brought Holmes in early. He got out of a jam and then pitched a great 9th inning to lock up the win for the New York Yankees. And then on the offensive side for the Orioles, just not a whole lot to say. They only had the 4 hits, or I'm sorry, 3 hits, 2 walks. Kerstad did get a start, had a hard hit ball. That was good to see. Um, but really, just not a whole lot. Heel shut him down, and then the Yankees bullpen came in, did a nice job, didn't allow any hard hit balls, and locked up the win. So sometimes you just get beat. Like that was kind of the feeling I got from a lot of Orioles fandom was the Yankees just kind of beat them in this game. There wasn't really a lot they could have done. Yeah, there were a couple chances to score runs, but Heel pitched well. Yankees bullpen pitched well. Sometimes you lose a game, and there's not really any explanation other than that. The Orioles lost, and well, the Orioles didn't lose. The Orioles did lose, but it's because the Yankees beat them. It's that simple. On to game 4, where the Orioles beat the Yankees 7-2. This is a game that early on didn't have great vibes, I didn't think. Carlos Rodon was kind of mowing through the Orioles hitters. Kyle Bradish similarly looked good, but that first inning was getting squeezed on some stuff. Had the hit by pitch to Rizzo that seemed like Rizzo kind of bent his knee into it a little bit. Brennan had argued it, was turned away. Um, just had some weird stuff in that first inning for Bradish that was kind of like, this is first start back from injury. He's getting squeezed. He's going to be limited on pitches anyway because it's his first start back off injury, all that stuff. Just felt like, okay, this is going to be a start where Bradish labors through 2 to 3 innings. Then the bullpen's got to carry him, and this is just going to get ugly. While Rodon has looked like a different pitcher this year in the Bronx. But and early on that was kind of the case. The Yankees went up 1-0 in the third, but then the Orioles come back in the bottom of the third and score one right back. And then the floodgates kind of open for the Orioles later in the game. Mateo hits a home run. McKenna hits a home run. Mountcastle hit the home run earlier to tie things up. They just started hitting Rodon around pretty good and got him out after 4 innings. He got into the fifth, but couldn't record an out. And they pushed him out and need to force the Yankees to kind of do what I was afraid the Orioles would have to do, which was rely on the bullpen for a while. Now, credit to the Yankees bullpen, they did a nice job. They only had to use 2 guys. Ron Marinaccio threw 2 innings. Michael Tonkin threw 2 innings. Neither one of them allowed any runs, so good on them. Bradish, I thought, looked very good in this game. Only goes 4 2/3. I know Hyde wanted to get him through the 5th inning to get him that win, but couldn't quite do it. Things started to kind of be dinking and dunking him a little bit in that 5th inning. Had to turn to Keegan Aiken, who did a nice job to get out of that inning, but then did give up the home run to Gleyber Torres in the 6th. But I think Bradish, if we stay on him for a minute, just looked quite good and really encouraging. Had some good velo on his fastball, which is something I was concerned about coming in off of, an elbow injury. Is he going to have the juice? And he certainly did. Touched 96, 97 with his sinker. Looked good. It was right on par with where he was in 2023. So really can't complain there. Slider, which is kind of his bread and butter, got 6 whiffs on 16 swings for a 38% whiff rate. That's great. I think you come out of this game very encouraged with Kyle Bradish in general. Just everything you could have hoped for. Yes, it would have been great to get him through the 5th inning, but he pitched really well. The fact he did that despite the first inning where I think he threw 25 pitches in the first inning, then throws just, about 60 the rest of the way. Did a really nice job. And man, does it feel good to have Kyle Bradish back in our lives. I think we forget. Well, I won't say I won't speak for you, but I think some people forget how good he was last year. And then to see him come back and just instantly make an impact like that was really encouraging. So Kyle Bradish was sort of my big takeaway from the entire series is he's back and we are lucky. And man, I am feeling good about Kyle Bradish. And then on offense, I think everybody was kind of doing their thing in this game, particularly like the 2nd through the 6th spots in the lineup, which was Rutschman, Mountcastle, Santander, Westberg, and Mateo. Really crushed it. They combined for what? 2, 4, 6, 7 hits in the game. Mountcastle goes deep. Mateo goes deep. McKenna out of nowhere goes deep. He also had a hard hit ball early in the game against Rodon with bases loaded, which that was another element of this. I thought this has not got good vibes. Was Rodon had loaded the bases with no outs, and the Orioles didn't score any runs. And I said, here we go. This series is gonna go down as a tie, and it's gonna be a problem for us. But Orioles ended up showing up later in the game. But yeah, those second through the sixth spots were just really crucial in this. And it was a different mix from the Orioles than what we see sometimes with Noah Hearn in there, obviously, with the left-handed batter. Mateo up to sixth in the lineup, Westberg up to fifth. Like just a little bit of a different look. Brandon Hyde is definitely trying to find what is the best setup for him. And I think he's searching for it against left-handed starters a little bit, which we're going to get tested that again this weekend in Cincinnati. They have a pair of lefties slated to face the Orioles in this one. I think ideally he probably wants to keep Mullins away from lefties, so that could get McKenna some playing time. Colton Cowser didn't look good here. Colton Cowser has definitely cooled off a little bit recently. 3 strikeouts. I think that was this game where he had the weird play in left field where he kind of overran the ball. It hit off the wall, ended up being a triple for Soto. Cowser could use a day, maybe, especially against a lefty. So they're still searching for it a little bit, but you can't argue with what the results were here. 6 runs, 7 runs, 6 of them earned against Rodon. Again, helped up by the Yankees defense a little bit. Volpe fielded the ball up the middle, fed it to Torres at second, who tried to grab it with his bare hand, dropped it. Wasn't a transfer issue. He just straight up dropped the ball. So again, Yankees looked a little bit bad there. But yeah, Orioles offense, man, they're for real. Taking 3 out of 4, big deal. Nice performance from the bullpen. So yeah, just good stuff from the Orioles. As for like a recap of the whole series, I come out of the series feeling really good about where the Orioles are, especially if the Yankees are their top competition for the division, which I think they probably are, especially once they get Cole back. And look, I don't think Judge is gonna play this poorly the entire season. He's just too good and got too long of a track record. There is, he might have some injury stuff. I know his spring training was hampered by some injury stuff. There could be something going on there. And he's a guy that has historically had some little nicks and things there, here and there, apart from his contract year where he really turned it on. He's a guy that has missed some time with injuries. So I do expect the Yankees will be a little bit better than this version, but the reality of what the Yankees are is they are a slower team. I think I was struck by how slow they are as a team versus the Orioles being a very fast team. The Orioles are quick, man. They're quick. The Yankees lead the league in double plays, I believe, hit into. The Orioles are the fewest double plays hit into. That matters. And really, right now, the Yankees offense is Soto, surrounded by a bunch of guys that just don't have it at the moment. So again, there could be some of the Orioles running into the Yankees at the right time for us. There's also some of, are the Yankees fraudulent a little bit? I think if you look at the MLB standings, which I will right now, they have a breakdown on the MLB website of record versus winning teams. The Yankees are 5-5 against teams over 500. They're 20-13 overall, 5-5 against winning teams. So that means 15. They're 15-7, 15-8 against teams under 500. The Orioles are 20-11 overall, and they are 14-5 against teams above 500, which means they are 6-6 against teams under 500. Now, you want to do a little bit better against teams under 500, but most importantly, you're beating the good teams, which is what you need to do down the stretch. And that's been impressive so far. So I think you come out of this series kind of, you wish the offense would have been a little better early in the series, but they turned it on at the end, took 3 out of 4 is huge. And if you look at some of the peripheral numbers here, just standings wise, the Orioles are clearly, at the start of May, the absolute best team in the American League East. And there's reason to believe, yes, the Yankees will get better when Cole is back and Judge is hitting, but there's reason to believe the Orioles are going to get better too. We just had Grayson Rodriguez go on the IL. He should be back. You expect Jackson Holliday will be back up at some point and hitting better than he did. Kobe Mayo's crushing it in AAA. Maybe Kerstad gets a bigger role. There's a lot of reasons to think the Orioles are not a finished product either. And the bullpen, I think it's been solid. It's been better than I expected it to be. I still believe the Orioles are going to add somebody of impact to the bullpen at some point prior to the trade deadline. So really happy with where the Orioles are. Really impressed with the series. You win 3 out of 4 despite not having your best offensive performances, and the bullpen came up huge, which is great. As far as MVP of the series, I think you have to go pitching on it. And I just wanna feature Jacob Webb again because he pitched, I think, let me look him up. I'm sorry, I'm doing this on the fly a little bit. But I just have been impressed by him, and he's really altered my perspective of him recently, and the Orioles have kind of used him accordingly. So pitches on the 30th, gives them an inning and a third, strikes out three. Pitches on the second, gives them an inning and a third, strikes out three. His ERA is down to 184 on the year. His FIP is 2.18. And then let's check out his Savant page. I'm sure this is going to be less exciting, but he's got the fastball working lately. That hasn't historically been his best pitch. His off-speed stuff has been really good. And he's just a guy that's really getting it done right now. Now he's a reliever. They're volatile. I don't expect it to last forever, but right now he's pitching great. Impressed by it. And we've seen this from before, like I said, just really important part of a close series, scores wise, is your bullpen coming through. And in a series where the Orioles, I think, kind of wanted to stay away from Craig Kimbrell, and they did successfully, Jacob Webb was able to step up and perform, and I was just really impressed by him. Um, and then man, least valuable is really a tough one. I don't think that um Colton Cowser played particularly well, so I might say him. He like I said, had the weird defense in left field. He compounded that by missing a cutoff man at one point, allowing a runner to advance to second. Is not hitting well right now. I think he's a guy that you maybe have to give him a break. And look, he we weren't fooled by him. He is a talented player, was a top 100 prospect. He's a guy that I've said on this podcast, I expected him to finish above Jackson Holliday in Rookie of the Year voting. I still believe that to be the case, simply, you know, due to timing. I think Cowser's going to get more time than Holliday will. I still believe in Cowser's talent, but right now he's pressing a little bit, striking out a lot. The defense stuff is weird for him. He's still adjusting to left field at Camden Yards, so I'm not going to push on him too much, but just isn't playing well right now. And I think with some lefties coming up in this series against Cincinnati, you got to give him a day and see if he can get himself right a little bit. Just Cowser not playing particularly well right now, so I'll give it to him. Although, again, look, you take 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. It's a team effort. Nobody was, I think on the offensive side, a lot of guys had fine series, but you don't really score runs until the fourth game. There's not a lot to be happy with there. And Cowser, I think, was just a guy that really struggled with it. Um, on to the Cincinnati series. We'll just very quickly go through this. They start the series on Friday night as I record, 6:10 p.m. start. Cole Irvin against Hunter Green. Interesting, matchup there. Irvin more of a finesse guy, Green a heavy power guy, lefty versus righty. Irvin's been pitching really well recently for the Orioles at the right time with guys getting healthy. He's cemented himself in the line, or I'm sorry, in the rotation for the time being. Green is the guy that's kind of become what the Reds hoped he would be. So nice to see. It'll be exciting to see Green pitch. He is really relying on his fastball. I think his most recent start, he threw it 70% of the time, 72% of the time, which was the most he's ever done in his career in one start. So interesting to see how the Orioles do against the big velocity there. On Saturday, John Means makes his season debut against Andrew Abbott, 2 lefties on the mound. I'm going into the series cautiously optimistic for Means. He pitched well in his 4 starts, I think, last year, but the peripherals weren't great. He looked really good in his final outing of his rehab stint, so I'm hoping that carries over. Abbott, a lefty who, again, is a little bit more finesse, but has a lot of offerings. Good player. So we'll see how that goes. 6:40 p.m. start on Masson 2. And then the Sunday finale, Dean Kramer versus Nick Lodolo. Lodolo's pitching really well this season, more of a power guy from the left side, 3-0 with a 1.88 ERA, getting a lot of strikeouts. If Kramer keeps the ball in the ballpark, he's tough to beat, but it's been an issue for him. He's allowed homers, I think, in each of his last 4 starts, and he's giving up like 19% home run per fly ball rate. So it hasn't been great there, but Kramer, he's just a gamer, and usually he's up for the moment. So excited to see how that goes for him. But that's about all we got. So yeah, go to Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe to us there, give us a rating and a review. 5 stars would be huge. You can also go to believe.com, BLEAV.com. We are part of the Believe network. There's, there's other Orioles podcasts over there. I think The Verge is on Believe now. There's a bunch of different shows about pretty much anything you could want. If you go to believe.com/shows/the-warehouse-podcast, rolls right off the tongue. That's where you can get our episodes there. You can also go over to YouTube where we are. You can watch me fiddle around on the computer for the last 35 minutes. If that's what you're into, go over to YouTube, search the Warehouse Podcast. We should pop right up. Give us a subscription. It's free, helps us out, helps us reach more people. So we'd appreciate that. And follow us on social media at the Warehouse Pod, or you can email the show, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. And once again, just want to thank our sponsor for the episode, betonline.ag. You can follow them at betonline_AG on social. They're going to be sponsoring us for, I think, the next 2 months. So you'll hear this ad read again. But if you're interested in sports betting, head over to betonline.ag to get involved there. And I think that's all we got. So I really appreciate you guys listening to this rambling episode. O's are winners. We're loving it. We're atop the AL East, and it's a good time to be a Baltimore Orioles fan. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tyler, and this has been the Warehouse Podcast.